Welcome back, students. Today we will discuss arrays. Arrays is one of the advanced part in programming wherein you are able to shrink your codes from a very large code into smaller codes, especially if you are dealing with loopings and multiple variables. Let's get on to this. Array is a data structure consisting of a collection of elements, values, or variables, each identified by at least one array index or key. A variable having the same name that uses an index to identify its contents can contain multiple values of the same data type. We will be explaining that later. The simplest type of data structure is a linear array, also called one-dimensional array. Now, as you can see here, this is an example of an array. Why are you seeing a C array here? Because Arduino is actually based on the C language, wherein it also follows that the arrays in C language is also the basis of the arrays in Arduino. Now, if you go back to what we have seen a while back, so it says here that array is a data structure consisting of a collection of elements. As you can see, it's something like this. We have this example of array here, a representation of an array, wherein a collection of elements. Elements is these boxes here. This box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4, and box 5. Okay? You also can see here that a variable having the same name, meaning you will not be calling this as let's say we have a variable LED, and then you have your another variable LED, assuming you have 5 LEDs here. So in order for you to declare 5 LCDs, you have to call it LED1, LED02, and so on and so forth. But if you are going to make use of an array, all you have to do is make use of the word LED. And then you will be having a so-called array index, which pertains to this one, which contains 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth, depending on the number of indices or the array size that you are actually trying to create. The simplest type of data structure is a linear array, also called a one-dimensional array. This is actually an example of a linear array, which is, it only contains one value per one value per box. If you are now trying to do a little bit of advanced array, you have your two-dimensional arrays, which can contains XY example, that is a two-dimensional arrays. You can have three-dimensional arrays, four-dimensional arrays, so on and so forth. Now, most of the time, these multiple dimensional arrays are actually used in researches, in large-scale researches that contains large amount of data. So nonetheless, we'll not be dealing with that right now. I am now introducing to you arrays. Okay. Example of an array is how do you declare this? Declaring array is there are actually three types written here. First type, second type, and then you have your third type. You have your type, and then you have your variable name, and then you have your max value. So an example for that is you have your variable int, you have your type data type int, you have your variable led, and the max value. Now, if you try now to look at this, you do not have actually any initializations, or so-called you do not have any values for your arrays. Unlike for the second type of declaration, is that you have this type, the variable name, the max, and then you have the equal sign here, and then open and close bracket. This is where you can put initial values of your array. The same array, you have your int, variable, and then you have your max. So you have your first value for your variable, which is 3. Second value is 5. And third value is 6. And then the third one is if you do not have an initial, or you do not have an idea of how many variables your array contains. Example, you have these 3 here. Now, specifying this value of 3 here, meaning you have only 3 values. However, if you put a blank inside the brackets, the square brackets, you can have an initial value of infinite type of numbers. Meaning, I can continue this, comma, let's say you have your 9, comma, 10, comma, 11, and then you have your close. Now, without getting any errors. Meaning, I have included this value 3, 5, 6, 9, 10, and 11 without indicating how many values are there. There are actually 6. Indicating 6 there. Because just in case that I would like again to add something here, let's say I would like to add 12 there, and you have placed 6 here, your code will now have an error. It's because 6 is already specified here, and you have a 7 value inside the curly brackets. So if you do not know the actual number of values of your array led is, it is safe to assume you have to place no value inside the curly brackets. Now, how does this indicate? This led 5 here is actually the array size. Just like this one. Array size. So you have your int led 5. The 5 indicate the total number of values that this variable led can contain. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now another example here is you have this initial value here. You have your lead and 3, meaning you have only 3. Meaning for this example, these are non-existent. So the initial value of this lead is lead 0 is actually 3. The lead 1 is actually 5. The lead 6, that is lead 2. The value is 6. Okay? Naintindihan? So actually, ganun din yung gagawin nyo rito. It's actually the same. The same concept if I add values here, 9, 10, and 11. Let's make it 5. 9 and 10. The initial values for this one is actually the same as in here. You have your 3, 5, 6, 9, and 10. Okay? That's the concept of this array. So these are things to remember in declaring an array. Index always starts with 0. Now, although if you remember what we did in the previous slide, int lead 5, you do not actually have a lead 5 value. Walang value yan, okay? Wala. Mali yan. Kasi nga, like I said, it starts with 0. And the number here only specifies the maximum number of values that it can contain, or simply your array size. Yan, nakalagay naman dyan. Array size. The highest index is always lower than 1 of the maximum number of values the array contains. Now, let's try to look into this. The highest index. Now, what is the highest index here? The highest index is 4. Okay? Is always lower than 1 of the maximum number of values. What is the maximum number of values the array can contain? 5. Now, meaning, this index, the highest index, is always less than 1 of the array 5, of the maximum array size. That is actually what it means. So, if you have a declaration of, let's say, int LED 10, what is the highest in this index? It will be lead 10 minus 1, you will get 9. So that is now the highest index that you can have on a variable array that is declared LED with array size 10. Square brackets encloses the index, like I have been doing, while curly bracket initializes the contents of the array. Just what you have seen a while back, it's int lead 3 is equal to 3, 5, 6. Now, this is just as an example only, and it can also become a constant. Meaning, it can also become constant. You can actually say that constant integer LED 5 is equal to, let's say, 3, 5, 9, 10, and 11. Okay. So that is, you can declare an array for it to become a constant value. Sample of an array variable. Now, try to look at this. This is what we have been doing for our past programming exercises. Assuming you have 3 LEDs, LED 1, LED 2, and LED 3. Now, in order for us to initialize those LEDs to become an output, we have to initialize them one by one. So pin mode LED 1, LED 2, and LED 3. So that is what we have been doing so far. Now, this is now a more advanced type of declaration wherein, as you can see, we have done away with the LED 01, the LED 02, and the LED 03. We have changed that into an array, the LED 03 there. And we have an initial value of 3, 5, and 6, just like what we have done here, 3, 5, and 6. Now, the same concept, if you remember what I have told you about array is actually a variable having the same name. So you are actually trying to call the same variable which is named LED. It's called LED, LED, LED. Unlike in here, it's called LED 01, LED 02, and LED 03. If you have more, you have LED 04, 5, so on and so forth. But in here, you only have to call it LED, 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 LED. The only difference is you are now calling it an array. You are now using the LED bracket 0, and you have your close bracket, square bracket. Now that indicates that is your index. So what does this indicate? That 0 here does not indicate the value 3, but indicates where it is located. Halimbawa, sabi natin dito is 0 yan. You are now telling that it will go to the index 0. Just like what we have in our drawing a while back. You have your 0, 1, 2, 3. But your index 0 contains 3. Your index 1 contains 5. Your index 2 contains 6. Now this 0 indicates this value 0 here, the index 0 there. So what does that contain? That index 0 contains a value of 3. That 3 now reflects to that value here. Ganon din yung mangyayari dito sa index 1. Sa index 1, ang nakalagay doon sa value niya is 5. So, itong buo na to, ang sinasabi niya, value niya is 5. Likewise with LED 2, its index 6. And last but not the least is this one. This is a more advanced programming wherein we are actually now using both the for loop, the looping statement, and the array, which is, as you can see in here, the same concept. We are actually using that as individual. We are still declaring that as individual declaration for the pin mode. However, in here, I only made use of one declaration pin mode, wherein it can go to loop in a for loop, and then it will go until 3 times. So take note, our index is 0, 1, and 2. So you have your 3 loops. You have your int I is equal to 0. Now if we try to look into how this program runs, for loop is a repetitive operation. So the initial value of I is equal to 0. So if I is 0, is I less than 3? Yes. If I is less than 3, then it will perform this. You have pin mode led I. What is the value of I? It's 0. So therefore, pin mode led 0. Now what is the value of led 0? It's actually 3. So pin mode 3 output. That is the concept. Pin mode 3. So 3. The same concept, if that is already done, it will go to our increment, which in turn it will become I is equal to 1. If I is equal to 1, is I 1 less than 3? Yes, then it will do this again. Led, what is I? 1. So that is led 1. And what is the value of led 1? It's actually 5. So that is pin mode 5 output. And then increment again. Is 2 less than 3? Yes, then it will perform this again. So led, what is I? It's 2. Led 2. What is the value of led 2? It's 6. Then the output, equivalent output of this pin mode is pin mode 6, then output. And then increment, and then you will have your 3 is less than 3. Is 3 less than 3? False. If that false, then it will not do this anymore. It will get out. Now, as you can see, this single program actually created the same program that this long program, many type of codes has actually the same output. Pareho lang sila. Hindi sila magkaiba. So, but kung bibilangin mo kung ilan yung coding mo, ilang steps lang to. Isa lang yan, 2, 3. 3 code lang yan. Ito, ilan to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, assuming hindi LED 3 ito, hanggang LED 10. Assuming hanggang LED 10 yan. Yan, dami yan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, ang mangyayari ngayon dito, the same concept, ang papalitan mo lang is that LED 10, diba? Then, ilalagay mo na yung mga values na nandito hanggang 10. And then, ito, papalitan mo lang to. Ano gagawin mo? Papalitan mo 4 in I less than 0. I less than, ano ilalagay natin? Of course, 10 na. Then, I plus plus. So, the same concept, pin mode. So, LED, I, then output. Close. So, the same lines of codes. Pero dito na, tingnan mo, kung 10 na yan, 10 yan. 10 din to. Ang dami yan. Magiging 10 yan. Ito, magiging 10 din. Ito, pagdating dito, ilan? O diba? Ganun din. Pareho lang. Pero pareho lang sila ng output. Pareho lang sila ng trabaho. Now, that is one of the advantage of an array variable. So, let's recap. Yung array is a variable having the same name, having the same index, and the most common array is your single or linear array. I hope you have learned something today. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video. Bye bye.